welcome to this episode of the weekly News Roundup. Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, a hardline ally of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has died in a helicopter crash. The Iranian president, a hardliner seen as a potential successor to Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, was killed when his helicopter crashed in poor weather in mountains near the Azerbaijan border, officials and state media said on Monday. The incident occurred during President Raisi's return flight to the Iranian city of Tabriz after he and Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev inaugurated the Kiz-Kalasi Dam on their shared border. The helicopter carrying the 63-year-old President Raisi, Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdollahian and other officials lost contact approximately 30 minutes into the flight. This sparked immediate concerns and a massive search and rescue operation was underway. The charred wreckage of the helicopter, which crashed on Sunday carrying Raisi, Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdollahian and 6 other passengers and crew, was found early on Monday after an overnight search in blizzard conditions. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei urged calm and assured that there would be no disruption in the country's governance. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who holds ultimate power with a final say on foreign policy and Iran's nuclear program, said First Vice President Mohammad Mokhber would take over as interim president. The official IRNA news agency reported. Khamenei said in a statement, "I announce 5 days of public mourning and offer my condolence to the dear people of Iran." Under the Islamic Republic's constitution, a new presidential election must be held within 50 days. We bring you this report.
Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, the country's foreign minister, and others have been found dead at the site of a helicopter crash Monday after an hours-long search through a foggy mountainous region of the country's northwest, state media reported. Raisi was 63. The crash comes as the Middle East remains unsettled by the Israel-Hamas war, during which Raisi, under Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, launched an unprecedented drone and missile attack on Israel just last month. Among the dead in the helicopter crash was Iranian Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdollahian. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei stressed the business of Iran's government would continue no matter what. Under the Iranian constitution, if the president dies, Iran's first vice president takes over with Khamenei's assent, and a new presidential election should be called within 50 days. Raisi, a hardliner who formerly led the country's judiciary, was viewed as a protégé of Khamenei, and some analysts have suggested he could have replaced the 85-year-old leader after Khamenei's death or resignation. Raisi had been on the border with Azerbaijan early Sunday to inaugurate a dam with Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev. The dam is the third one that the two nations built on the Aras River. The visit came despite chilly relations between the two nations, including over a gun attack on Azerbaijan's embassy in Tehran in 2023 and Azerbaijan's diplomatic relations with Israel, which Iran views as its main enemy in the region. Raisi was sanctioned by the US in part over his involvement in the mass execution of thousands of political prisoners in 1988 at the end of the bloody Iran-Iraq war. Iranian Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdollahian, who died along with President Ibrahim Raisi, was known for his fierce anti-Israel sentiment and skepticism of the West. A career diplomat and conservative figure with close ties to the Revolutionary Guards, Amir Abdollahian took office following Raisi's 2021 election win. His tenure as Iran's top diplomat was marked by the intensified diplomatic activity to end Iran's isolation and offset the impact of crippling US sanctions. He particularly sought to force relations with the Islamic Republic's Arab neighbors, including regional Sunni Muslim powerhouse Saudi Arabia. In a landmark Chinese-brokered deal, Tehran and Riyadh agreed in March 2023 to restore ties and reopen their respective embassies. Amir Abdullahian was born in the city of Damgan, east of Tehran in 1964. He was married and had 2 children. Amir Abdullahian had earned a bachelor's degree in international relations from the University of Tehran in 1991, later completing a master's degree and a doctorate in the same field. Under former President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, Amir Abdullahian served as Deputy Foreign Minister for Arab and African Affairs. He had been involved in efforts to restart stalled negotiations on Iran's nuclear program after a 2015 deal with Western governments unraveled as the United States unilaterally withdrew from the accord in 2018. Talks, however, have ground to a standstill. Throughout his career, Amir Abdullahian was known for his strong ties to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps (IRGC), the ideological arm of Iran's military. The diplomat was particularly close with revered IRGC General Qasem Soleimani, the commander of its foreign operations arm, who was killed in a 2020 US strike in Baghdad. Amir Abdullahian had hailed Soleimani's strategic genius for preventing Syria and Iraq from disintegrating. In a June 2020 interview, he said Soleimani was a true diplomat for his negotiation skills. Last month, with regional tensions soaring over the ongoing war in the Gaza Strip and with violence drawing in regional Iranian allies, Amir Abdullahian defended Tehran's first-ever direct attack on sworn enemy Israel. Under Raisi, Iran now enriches uranium at nearly weapons-grade levels and hampers international inspections. Iran has armed Russia in its war on Ukraine, as well as launched a massive drone and missile attack on Israel amid its war against Hamas in the Gaza Strip. It also has continued arming proxy groups in the Mideast like Yemen's Houthi rebels and Lebanon's Hezbollah.
From Iran, we move to a collection of small islands in the Pacific Ocean called New Caledonia, which has seen tremendous unrest in the past week with massive protests and fighting going on. This month, protests and riots broke out in New Caledonia, a collection of islands in the Pacific Ocean that still remains a colony of France. The violent protests have led to 6 deaths and the declaration of a state of emergency. New Caledonia is a French overseas territory in the Southwest Pacific. The indigenous Melanesian Kanak people are the original inhabitants of these islands. It has a population of about 270,000 people, with the indigenous Kanak people constituting 44% of the population. French lawmakers on Tuesday pushed forward plans to allow outsiders who moved to New Caledonia at least 10 years ago to vote in the territory's elections. While it has on 3 occasions rejected independence in referendums, the cause for independence retains strong support among the Kanak people, whose ancestors have lived on the islands for thousands of years. Colonized by France from the second half of the 19th century, New Caledonia has special status, unlike the country's other overseas territories. Protests erupted last week, sparked by anger among the indigenous people over a constitutional amendment approved in France that would change who is allowed to participate in elections, which local leaders say they fear will dilute the Kanak vote. We bring you this report.
New Caledonia became a French overseas territory in 1946 and also has representatives in both houses of the French Parliament, and the President of France serves as the territory's head of state. France maintains jurisdiction over New Caledonia's defense and internal security. Violence broke out following a controversial voting reform that aimed to change existing restrictions which prevent up to 1/5 of the population from voting in provincial elections. Louis Lefranc, High Commissioner of the Republic in New Caledonia, announced new security deployments. After rioting that began on Monday, leaving 5 dead and resulting in hundreds of arrests, Thursday night was relatively calm, he said. However, there were still points of confrontation and concern in Numia. Following the Numia Accord, the electorate for local elections was restricted to pre-1998 residents of the islands and their descendants who have maintained continuous residence on the territory for at least 10 years. This means that only the residents of the islands who have lived there from before 1998 and their children have the right to vote. The system, which excludes French European settlers and migrants from Polynesian parts of France, including their adult children, had been judged acceptable in 2005 as part of a decolonization process by the European Court of Human Rights, given that it was a provincial measure. The locals say that this will safeguard their interest and help them to have a say in the matters of the islands. Tensions remained high in Numia, the capital of New Caledonia, on Friday after days of riots as the French government's representatives said areas of the Pacific territory have escaped state control. 6 people have been killed and the unrest has left a trail of burnt businesses and cars and looted shops with road barricades restricting access to medicine and food. The business chamber said 150 companies had been looted and burned. Opposition to a French plan to impose new voting rules spiraled into deadly violence in the archipelago between Australia and Fiji, which is one of several territories around the globe that remain part of France. In the working-class districts of Numia, which have a high population of indigenous Kanak residents, buildings were burned and wrecked vehicles remained in the middle of the road. The official death toll stood at 5, with 2 police officers killed. The Field Action Coordination Cell, the CCAT, the group which organized the protests on Monday against the proposed constitutional reform, blamed the French government for the violence. Voting reform must still be approved by a joint sitting of both houses of the French Parliament. President Emmanuel Macron has said French lawmakers will vote to adopt the constitutional change by the end of June unless New Caledonia's opposing sides can strike a new deal. Pro-independence political parties say they want the French government to withdraw the electoral reform before they restart talks.
In Taiwan, presidential elections were held in January of this year, and Taiwan's new president has called on China to stop its intimidation after being sworn into historic third term for the ruling party. Lai Ching-te called on Beijing to cease its intimidation of Taiwan as he was sworn in as president on Monday, marking the start of a historic third consecutive term for the island's ruling Democratic Progressive Party, the DPP, which has championed democracy in the face of years of growing threats from authoritarian China. 64-year-old Lai, a former doctor and vice president, was inaugurated alongside new Vice President Sao Bi Kim, who recently served as Taiwan's top envoy to the United States. Both leaders and their party are openly loathed by Beijing for championing Taiwan's sovereignty. China's ruling Communist Party says the self-ruling democracy is part of its territory, despite never having controlled it, and has vowed to take the island by force if necessary. Lai used his 30-minute inaugural speech to broadcast a message of peace and declare that a glorious era of Taiwan's democracy has arrived, describing the island as an important link in a global chain of democracies, while reiterating a determination to defend its sovereignty. We bring you this report.
Lai takes up the mantle from his DPP predecessor, Tsai Ing-wen, who bolstered the island's international standing and recognition during her 8 years in office. Tsai, Taiwan's first female president, was unable to stand again because of term limits. Lai emerged victorious over rivals in the opposition Kuomintang KMT party and the Taiwan People's Party in a January election, which was fought over a mixture of livelihood issues as well as the thorny question of how to deal with its giant one-party state neighbor, China, which under leader Xi Jinping has grown more powerful and bellicose. Then voters shrugged off warnings from Beijing that the DPP's re-election would increase the risk of conflict. The DPP holds the view that Taiwan is a de facto sovereign nation that should bolster defenses against China's threats and deepen relations with fellow democratic countries. In his inaugural address, Lai called on China to cease their political and military intimidation against Taiwan, share with Taiwan the global responsibility of maintaining peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait as well as the greater region, and ensure the world is free from the fear of war. A soft-spoken political veteran, Lai hails from a more radical wing of the DPP and was once an open supporter of Taiwan independence, a red line for Beijing. Though his views have tempered since then, China never forgave him for his comments from 6 years ago, in which he described himself as a practical worker for Taiwan independence. Lai has now said he favors the current status quo, proclaiming that Taiwan is already an independent sovereign country, so there is no plan or need to declare independence, in a deliberately nuanced stance that mimics the one held by outgoing Tsai. Lai's inauguration ceremony was attended by national leaders from a handful of countries with which Taiwan still maintains formal diplomatic ties, several former American officials, and lawmakers from other countries, according to Taiwan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In a statement, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken offered his congratulations to Lai and the Taiwan people for once again demonstrating the strength of their robust and resilient democratic system. Lai takes office during a particularly contentious period between Taiwan and China, which in recent years has ramped up diplomatic, economic, and military pressure on the self-governing democracy as Taiwan's leaders tightened informal ties with Washington. In his inaugural address, Lai said he hoped China would face the reality of Taiwan, respect the choices of the people of Taiwan, and engage in cooperation with the legal government chosen by Taiwan's people. Beijing has sought to portray Lai as inciting conflict, repeatedly framing the elections earlier this year as a choice between peace and war. Official communication between Beijing and Taipei is unlikely to resume as Lai takes office, with China repeatedly rebuking his offer for talks and denouncing him as a dangerous separatist.
We move now to a story on the Order of Malta. Now, what is the Order of Malta? The Sovereign Order of Malta is one of the oldest institutions of Western and Christian civilization, a lay religious order of the Catholic Church since 1113 and a subject of international law. The Sovereign Order of Malta has diplomatic relations with over 100 states and the European Union, and permanent observer status at the United Nations. It is neutral, impartial, and apolitical. The order is unique in that, while it has no territory, it is a sovereign entity under international law, with its own passports, diplomatic relationships, and permanent observer status at the United Nations. Presently, there are approximately only 500 diplomatic passports in circulation, making it the rarest and most exclusive passport globally. The Sovereign Military Order of Malta can be hard to define. The 1,000-year-old entity is a Catholic religious order and medical aid organization and international diplomatic entity all in one. Present in 120 countries with over 2,000 projects in the medical social field and more than 120,000 volunteers and medical staff, the order functions as an emergency relief organization in many developing areas and crisis zones. Today, the Order of Malta is active in caring for people in need through its medical, social, and humanitarian works. Day to day, its broad spectrum of social projects provides a constant support for forgotten or excluded members of society. It is especially involved in helping people living in the midst of armed conflicts and natural disasters by providing medical assistance, caring for refugees, and distributing medicines and basic equipments for survival. We bring you a story on this religious order's exemplary service in this ongoing war, in the war torn. Until we meet next time, stay blessed.